Hey guys, welcome back to r/entitled_people. Imagine buying an abandoned farm and your entitled neighbor being not happy with it. He thought he could buy the property for cheap, but instead the seller's parents passed away and now the entitled neighbor constantly trespasses on your property and breaks into your house. Here is what happened. Let's dive right into the video. And the first one starts like this. So a few months ago I made the decision to buy a farm. For some context, I had been in a pretty bad space mentally. I won't get into it too much, but I generally felt that I needed to escape from the life I had. I was absolutely miserable in the job that I had and was living in a dingy apartment in the city. I just wanted to separate myself entirely from all reminders of the life I was living. My first thought was to move. I didn't want to move to another place in the city as it was full of reminders and it would be a waste of money. I started looking into properties outside of the city, somewhere a little closer to nature, thinking it would help me. I found one that had recently been put up for sale. It was a small farm with some livestock. Though moving was an incredibly huge risk, I also could not see myself staying where I was, so I decided to check out the place. The elderly couple that had been living on the farm passed away a few months before I checked out the farm from natural causes. I think the wife passed first and her husband quickly followed out of heartbreak. Their daughter, the person who had been taking care of the farm in their stead, had been trying to sell it because she has her own life to attend to and couldn't put away time to take care of the farm. Of course, not everybody wants to own a farm, as it truly is a huge responsibility. That's why she had been struggling to sell it. Others, as the daughter told me, only saw the farm as a way to make money and not a lifestyle, and she worried that she would sell it to the wrong person. Honestly, when I met her, she had been skeptical of my intent with the farm and if I would take care of it well. She told me this, but I must have convinced her somehow because she ended up selling it to me. I just wanted to say that I really am trying to take care of the farm right now. I want to honor the people who lived here before me and care for the animals that still remain. Anyways, I bought the farm with some money I had saved up. It's honestly not a big farm, probably around 2 acres total of land, so it was not too expensive. I did all my necessary research and tried my best to take care of the animals. There are a few chickens and some cows, and I established a daily routine for myself, and it honestly broke the horrible routine that I had back in the city. I'm honestly not sure what the difference is. I think it's more peaceful here, and I think that was the best thing. That's not the point of the story though, so I will get to the main stuff now. So the farm is not too isolated. It's on a stretch of dirt road in front of a forested area, and along the road are all of the other farms. However, we all mainly keep to ourselves, so I am alone if I wanna be. The neighbor next to me was not the most friendly guy. I passed him a couple of times when I'm driving, and though I wave, he just glares at me. I tried not to think too much of it and figured the guy was just antisocial or something. One day while I was outside tending to the chickens, he came up to me and sparked a conversation. Obviously, this surprised me because he seemed to hate my guts beforehand, but I went along with it anyway. He then got the topic of how I had bought the farm and I explained the story simply without too many details. A sort of annoyed expression crossed his face at that moment, but I tried to brush it off. He then asked me if I would be willing to sell the farm to him for a lower price. I tried to politely say no, saying I didn't have anywhere else to go if I did sell it, and that I was very much happy where I was. He got annoyed and tried pushing it again, but I continued to deny him. He eventually just gave up and returned to his house, saying that I knew where to find him if I changed my mind. At that point, anytime I passed him close enough or slow enough for a conversation, he would try to convince me to sell the farm. And every time I said no, I got weirded out by it, so I decided to message the daughter again to ask her if she knew anything about it. And she explained to me that her neighbor had been trying to get the farm from her parents for years, wanting to expand his own farmland. When her parents passed, he was the first one to jump in line for the house. Apparently, he thought that he was entitled to the farm because he knew her parents and lived right next to them. However, she denied him the sale because her parents didn't like him and she didn't believe that he would take care of the farm or the animals well. I made note of that and focused on trying to ignore the neighbor as much as possible. However, he began spreading rumors about me to the others, making it so that they ignored me too. I was not sure of what they were saying myself, but the daughter, who still has connections to the other families living there, said that he was saying that I'd gotten the money to buy the farm through illegal means and that I was there to ruin the property. The daughter tried her best to clear up my image for my sake, which I'm really grateful for, but still the neighbor was just spreading the stuff like like a wildfire. If that was not bad enough, he also began messing with the farm itself. I noticed this when I found a hole in one of my fences. It looked like someone was trying to cut through it, and my immediate thought was the other neighbor had done it. I checked my cameras, and sure enough, it was him. I was extremely worried about my animals, thinking he might have done something to hurt them or sabotage their food, but I checked everything and they were actually fine. I decided to download the footage and confront him. He seemed excited that I was approaching him, probably thinking I finally decided to sell him the farm, but I showed him the video and told him to explain himself. He kept claiming that it was not him and that I was just making up assumptions. Well, I decided to leave it alone, but noted to myself to install tougher fences and maybe some more cameras. A month or so passed after that incident and he continued trying to get the farm. Although it was extremely annoying, I knew the only way to get him to stop was to give him the farm, and since I was most definitely not doing that, the only thing I could do was ignore him. One day, however, he got fed up with me ignoring him and decided to confront me himself. I have no gate to the entrance of my house, so he was able to get to my door. He rang the doorbell and I noticed it was him through the peephole, and figuring that he was just trying to be annoying again, I ignored him. He then rang it louder, but I continued to ignore him, and that's when he started pounding on the door. He yelled, "I know you're in there, so answer the door." I was annoyed and, admittedly, a little frightened, but I opened the door anyway. Honestly, it was a bad choice. He immediately brandished his shotgun at me. I hadn't seen it because I think he hid it behind his back while he was at the door. He started yelling at me about how he was tired of waiting for me to give up my ownership of the farm, and he demanded that I give him the deed to the farm immediately, or else he would be forced to take extreme measures. I tried to get him to calm down, but that only seemed to piss him off more. I said yes and told him to let me go into the other room to grab it. Thankfully, he did not follow me inside. Once I was inside my room out of his sight, I quickly called 911. I then quickly explained that my neighbor was threatening me with a gun, telling them my address. They assured me to stay calm and that they would send officers quickly. Once the call ended, I went to my safe to grab the deed, and at this point he stormed into the room asking what was taking so long. I explained that I was just trying to open the safe. He let me open it and I decided to go as slow as possible, pretending to have forgotten the code. He yelled at me again and I said that I had to go slowly because the lock was faulty. Although I could tell he was getting more and more angry, he let me continue. But honestly, I think if he hadn't been so desperate for the deed, he probably would have shot me. I continued stalling, but eventually the lock opened. I gave him the deed begrudgingly. Luckily, however, I had stalled long enough. The police arrived not too long after the phone call ended. They burst into the house, pointing their weapons at him and demanding that he drop his shotgun on the ground. He complied immediately and they arrested him. Afterwards, I talked to the police, giving them my statement. I was so shaken up, so I decided to treat myself to dinner in the city before heading back to sleep early. With the initial arrest, my neighbor was charged with aggravated assault, trespassing, brandishing a firearm, and attempted criminal coercion. He would be in jail for a long time, but I decided that that wasn't enough. He had made my life miserable when I had moved here to escape misery, so I decided to sue him for property damage as well as emotional distress. I also decided to get a restraining order. Although he would be in jail for a while, I wasn't exactly sure that he would leave me alone once he was out, which honestly still frightens me a bit. I got a large sum of money from the lawsuit, and while I saved some, I used most of it to invest in the farm. The incident actually brought me into better standing with my neighbors. Of course, the daughter had been doing the work to clear my name a little bit, but I think the incident really highlighted how innocent I was in all of this. Since my neighbor was the one who was spreading the rumors in the first place, I think everybody realized that he was spreading lies and trying to spoil my image. I've started taking a little more to these neighbors who have been trying to make up for their past ignorance. It's a little overwhelming for me personally, but it's nice to know that I have some support in the community now. And yeah guys, if you enjoy these farmer stories, please don't forget to post some star emojis in the comments and like the video, because that would help me tremendously. Thank you so much. The next one is a fantastic malicious compliance farmer story. It is titled, "It is still a rural area." I was reminded of this by the account of the pig farm in Slovenia. So early 2000s, my wife and I had a nice home built in a new development that used to be a strip of farmland. The loss of farmland to housing is never a good thing, but it's common in the US. In Pennsylvania, farmers will often sell a portion of their land because costs are driving them out of business. Anyway, enough economics lesson. So we are in the countryside, the development is located along a small back road, there are scattered houses elsewhere, but the entire township is still mostly farms. Somehow, a proto-Karen raised a successful challenge to a nearby farmer's cattle operation. He lost because his facilities for manure management were old, out of compliance, etc. Now, her chief complaint was the odor. I'm here to tell you that nasty smells were actually non-existent. Yes, it smelled like a farm sometimes, but that's natural, earthy smell. You know what is not a natural earthy smell? Treated sewage sludge. No longer able to use cow manure from his herd to fertilize his fields, the farmer began spreading treated sewage sludge on his land. Now, the use of sludge is controversial, but what is completely uncontestable is that it stinks to high heaven. It is bad, very bad. Once it dries, it's not noticeable, but for a day or three? Oh my god. Proto-Karen naturally went to the authorities and tried everything to get him to stop. His only response, by all accounts, was that he wouldn't have to use the sludge if he still had his cattle operation. Check and mate. And yeah guys, that Karen learned the hard way that you should never mess with a farmer, especially when he can get revenge on you with some manure. Either way, the next one is titled, Here's the Hole You Ordered, also posted on r/malicious-compliance. So my supervisor instructed me to dig some post holes. He dismissed my question as to how long the posts were as impertinence. My job was to dig, not to think. I was a California city boy working in the summer of 1974 on a fairly modern irrigated farm north of Pasco, WA. $2.50 per hour, mostly driving tractors during fruit harvest. I like driving the tractor since high school, me since forever, since I love to dig holes. A large-ish irrigation valve station was located near the farm office and had gotten run into by one of our visitors. My job that morning was to dig holes for posts to be installed across the front to protect the equipment. I was so low in the pecking order that I wasn't even trusted to install the posts. I was just the hole digger. Even knowing post measurements was above my pay grade. The soils were very sandy, Columbia River blow sand. It was barely moist enough and compacted enough to hold the whole wall without caving. The easiest hole digging ever. The round point of the shovel made it easy to pull sand up the side of the hole 1 cup at a time. The length of my arm plus the length of the shovel added up to about 7 feet. I was left to my own resources for quite some time, so 7+ feet is how deep my holes were. The holes were the same shovel blade width diameter from top to bottom. Looks can be deceiving, and with a narrow opening, these didn't look like deep holes and there wasn't like an impressive pile of dirt next to each hole. Well, after I was finished, the supervisor finally showed up with the posts. He scoffed at the small pile of dirt next to each hole, convinced I had stopped well short. Without consulting beyond asking if I was done, he dropped the first post into one of my lovingly crafted artisanal holes. It was deeply satisfying to watch his post completely disappear from our view. I'm pretty sure he thought I lied when I said I'd only used the shovel. And the next one is another malicious compliance story, and this one is titled, I was nice to my awful grandma. So this happened when I was 16, I'm now 33. My dad's parents and I never got along. She thought I should be a homemaker and I prefer to be out with the men hunting, fixing cars, riding horses, etc. Luckily, they lived in Ohio and we lived in Wisconsin, so I rarely had to see them. I was working on a dairy farm, and if you've ever been to one, you know it has a very ripe manure smell. My mom had threatened to not let me go to a horse show the next week if I wasn't nice to her in-laws. She agreed that they were awful though. I had to work the morning they were supposed to arrive, so I rubbed against every stinky, gross cow. After that, I volunteered to clean the 20 calf hutches. Calf hutches were the worst because they smell like spoiled milk, rotten eggs, poo and cows. I got as nasty as I could before I came home. By the time I got there, they had arrived and the whole family was chatting on the back porch. I plastered a smile on my face and said, "Grandma," and went in for a hug. She stepped back with a horrified look on her face, looked me up and down and coldly said, "Go sanitize yourself." Normally, I would have showered and eaten breakfast, but not that day. I went inside, washed my hands and calmly ate the most delicious revenge waffles I'd ever tasted. To this day, my mom loves telling this story. She couldn't be mad at me because I was nice to my grandma, just like she told me to. And now let's move on to the next story. It starts like this. While I am fortunate enough to not live in a neighborhood with an HOA, I'm a firefighter for a suburban district that is chock full of them. Big ones, small ones, old ones, brand new ones, HOAs frickin' everywhere. For the most part, they are not a hassle. They gate off their private roads, but as long as they put a sensor on it or a padlock that uses our standard department key, it's not an issue. Enter the views. The views are so-called condos built in the late 70s, and as far as I can tell, the only view they have is of a freeway on-ramp and some eucalyptus trees. Sounds like pretty awful condos to me. Anyway, the views were built along a narrow road that starts and ends off of the main road, making one big loop about a quarter-mile long with a couple cul-de-sacs branching off. It's important to note that the driveways for each end of the loop are about 30 feet apart off of the same road. The views have a lot of older residents, so we are there semi-frequently for medical aids, people smoking out their kitchens when they forgot about the food they left on the stove, and even the occasional structure fire. Responding there is annoying though, because they build speed bumps about every 25 feet along this loop, so once you're in the views, you're not getting anywhere fast. Which is annoying, but it's a private road, so they can technically build as many speed bumps as they want. Enter the chain. About a third of the way along the loop from the first driveway, there's a chain across the road. Padlocked to a steel pole on one side, it's a generic master brand lock, to which we don't have a key. Why is it there? What does it do? Why would anyone build something like that? Well, the answer to all three of those questions is, who the hell knows? The chain has been in place as long as I've been working at this department, and no one can tell me exactly why it's still a thing. Phone calls to the HOA regarding the chain went unanswered and unreturned. The problem with the chain is its location. If we are responding to an address that's closer to the first driveway, but just past the chain, we would have to go the long way around to get there. The operative word here is would. When the pandemic was really ramping up in early 2020, we were at the views a lot. Sometimes 2 or 3 times a shift. Approaching from the main road, we always take the first driveway, because screw taking the long way. Someone called 911, so we are gonna get there quickly. That's what we are paid to do. So when the address came up on the other side of the chain, it was unanimously decided by us that we take the path of least resistance. Enter the bolt cutters. Every time we needed to get to an address past the chain, I would hop out of the engine, grab the bolt cutters and snap a link. Chain goes down, engine and ambulance go through. Simple solution. After about a week of this and many mysteriously replaced chains, the enigma of the chain was finally revealed. One night, as I have a hapless link firmly in the grasp of my bolt cutters, I hear a shrill shriek, "Stop!" A middle-aged woman comes speed-walking out of the condo right next to the chain. "I'm the HOA president. That's there for a reason." I want to hear all about that reason, but we are here for a response and the clock is ticking. So, snap, another link is broken. The chain falls slack and onward we go. We resolved that we will stop by her unit after we clear the call to let her know what a nuisance the chain is and that something needs to be done about it. This course of action was ultimately unnecessary as HOA president took it upon herself to huff and puff after us as we drove away and came speed-walking up again as we pulled up to the response address. I went inside with the ambulance crew, but I could hear her shrieking at my captain outside. We wrap up the call, get the patient loaded into the ambulance, and she is still going off on him. What it basically boiled down to was that she took it upon herself to install the chain because she didn't want people using the road as thoroughfare. The reasoning behind this is an utter mystery to a rational mind because it's a loop that begins and ends on the same road 30 feet apart. No one is using the views as a thoroughfare. The chain got installed where it is because that is where her condo is. She demands that we just go the long way for addresses past the chain. We explain that it hinders response time. She does not accept this. It takes my captain asking her that if her unit was on fire and we were responding from the other direction down the main road, would she want us to take an extra minute going the long way or just cut the chain and get to her unit faster? She acquiesces that she had not considered this, but also refuses to do anything about the chain. War it is then. Every opportunity we got, we cut that damn chain, never maliciously, only out of necessity, but it was necessary to the point where it was getting comical. A pile of snapped chain links lay discarded in the gutter. She made numerous attempts at peace. What if we just notified her when we needed it unlocked? Yeah, no. What if we just cut a link on one end instead of down the middle? Sorry, middle is faster. What if she gave us a key to the lock? Sorry, but if it's not the department issued lock, we are not gonna take the time to dig through the key box. One day, as I hopped out to gleefully cut the chain as always, something was different. Zip ties. Tired of buying new chains, or perhaps the chain fund had dried up, HOA president had resorted to zip tying the chain back together where we had cut it. She even attached a tag saying, "Fire department, cut zip tie only." After consulting with my captain, we decided upon the most prudent course of action. I did not have a pair of scissors on me, but I sure as hell had a pair of bolt cutters. Snap snap, dead center in one of the remaining length of chain. And so it went, as the chain got gradually shorter and shorter and became more zip tie than chain. Despite her rushing out of her condo when the engine pulled up to the chain, we were always faster with the bolt cutters. The chain has been fully replaced a couple more times, and the same cycle has ensued until one day last week when everything changed. Enter the gate. As we responded to the views, we pulled up to the chain. I already had the bolt cutters out and ready to go, only to be greeted with a most unexpected surprise. Where the chain had once stretched across the road, impotent in the face of our departmental onslaught, now loomed a two-arm swinging gate, a beefy one too. They definitely assessed some new HOA fees to pay for this beast. On cue, out came HOA President Karen. This time, she said nothing, only crossed her arms in defiance and looked on with a smirk. I assessed this new obstacle for a second, too thick to ram through, plus that would damage the engine, tubular steel mounted on concrete anchored posts, so no just lifting the gate off the hinge. "Looks like you will be taking the long way from now on," she said, clearly having played out this exact scenario in her head countless times since having the gate installed. And she would have been right, except the arms of the gate were secured by a length of chain wrapped around and padlocked. I looked straight at the HOA president as I lined up the bolt cutters on a chain link and the padlock shackle. Snap snap, I've never seen someone visibly deflate the way that HOA president did at that moment. I pushed the gate open and the engine drove through. As I climbed back into the engine, I heard her call out, "At least close it behind you." I probably don't need to tell you that I left that gate wide open. The icing on this cake is that we sent out the fire marshal to check it out, and while the chain technically met the definition for impeding emergency vehicle access, we let it slide due to it being so easily bypassed. The gate, however, was a massive violation of county codes. Despite being a private road, the number of residents along the loop in the view stipulated that any gate shall be automatically opening and have an emergency vehicle sensor. The gate fits neither of those criteria, so boom, 30-day notice to remove that crap or face massive fines from the county for impeding emergency vehicle access. So in summary, we waged a years-long battle against one HOA president's desperate grasp to control a problem that never existed in the first place. And if that does not capture HOAs in a nutshell, I don't know what does. And yeah, Ripe Stars, I gotta say, I'm a little bit shocked that the fire department let this go as long as it could. I would have threatened the Karen with legal action or just already initiated legal action in the first instance of this happening. Impeding emergency vehicles is a serious offense, and she should have faced consequences for this way sooner. I mean, it makes for a funny story, but honestly, this could have gone very wrong. Let me know what you think about this story in the comments. I'm really curious what you have to say. And before we end the video, let's read one last funny story from r/malicious compliance. This one is titled, "My daughter is apparently gonna be a future member." So my wife told her to stop putting stickers all over the house and she should only put stickers on paper. My daughter argued with her, but my wife was just done picking stickers up all over the house, especially the kitchen, so it was not going anywhere. Well, an hour or so later, I walk into the kitchen and I see stickers on post-it notes, and the post-it notes were stuck all over the refrigerator. My daughter was so proud of herself, it was hilarious. To add some context here, she was almost 3 or 4 when this happened. It happened 4 years ago and it popped up in my Facebook feed. We also did not have an issue with our kids putting stickers up, but she had emptied the sticker book like 3 days in a row, so it was getting old. Either way, my wife and I both thought it was hilarious. My wife got a picture of her next to her work with the biggest crap-eating grin you can imagine. I showed her the picture today. She is almost 8 and she cracked up saying, "That sounds like something she would have done." And yeah guys, thank you for watching. Please don't forget to check out my playlist if you cannot get enough of my content, and I will see you again tomorrow.